And Judge Watson was one of the judges as well back in March who also struck down the Travel Ban 2.0 executive order as unconstitutional. He stopped it from going into effect. So it's important to note that the president's travel ban was supposed to go into effect tomorrow. Now, this was the latest iteration of the travel ban. It pertained to 6 different countries, not all of them Muslim majority, as the administration pointed out. It also included Venezuela. Some government officials were actually banned, in fact, because of this federal court ruling out of Hawaii. One thing I want to read from you from this opinion from the judge, he basically said that this third try at this executive order, it, quote, suffers from precisely the same maladies as its predecessor. It lacks sufficient findings that the entry of more than 150 million nationals from 6 specified countries would be detrimental to the interests of the United States. So the judge there saying that the administration has not proven that barring these people would help the situation in the United States. And he also said that the executive order, quote, plainly discriminates based on nationality in the manner that the Ninth Circuit has found antithetical to both Section 1152 and the founding principles of this nation. So, Brianna, just to reiterate, this is travel ban, the third version of it that was supposed to go into effect tomorrow. A judge, a federal district judge in Hawaii, has now ruled that this travel ban, it cannot go into effect, that it, at this point, he says it appears it is unconstitutional, and he has stopped it from going into effect. So once again, the administration's third try at this struck down by a federal court judge. Brianna?
All right, Jessica Schneider has the very latest on this. If you wouldn't mind standing by for me now, I do want to bring in Jeff Toobin, our chief legal analyst, to talk to us about this. Jeff, what's your reaction?
Well, this is the continuing saga of the travel ban. What's interesting about this ruling is that Travel Ban 2 was supposed to be addressed by the Supreme Court this month, but the court dismissed that case because it was moot. Travel Ban 2 is no longer in effect. But what I think is almost certain now is that this ruling about Travel Ban 3 will be on a rocket ride to the Supreme Court, and we will get a resolution one way or another. I think each time the Trump administration has revised the travel ban, it has become more likely to be upheld. It is more narrowly tailored. There is a more explanation for the basis for it. Obviously, the federal district judge in Hawaii was not persuaded that this one was constitutional. But I think the Trump administration is in better shape defending Travel Ban 3 in the Supreme Court rather than the 2 earlier versions, and I expect they'll have the chance sooner rather than later.
Jeff, by the Supreme Court passing on Travel Ban 2.0 because 3.0 was going into effect or had been drafted and was going to go into effect, that wasn't the Supreme Court's way of signaling how it felt about 3.0, right? It's just the point was moot, and this has to go back through the process of being potentially challenged as it now has been by a lower court.
No, I don't think we should draw any conclusions about whether Travel Ban 3 will be upheld based on the dismissal of the case involving Travel Ban 2. That was just a procedural case in the Supreme Court. This is, but I do think the Trump administration probably has a better chance in the Supreme Court than it has, particularly in these courts in the Ninth Circuit, court in the region covered by the Ninth Circuit, Hawaii and the West Coast of the United States, where most of these cases have originally come up, which tend to be the more liberal courts in the country. The Supreme Court is certainly more on the conservative side.
All right, stand by for me, Jeff, too. I'm bringing Tim Naftali, presidential historian, back in with me. Okay, so this is quite some breaking news here, as we've learned that a federal judge in Hawaii, saying that the travel ban, the third attempt the Trump administration has made at it, that it is not constitutional, at least according to him. So Jeffrey Toobin telling us this is going to be on the express train to the Supreme Court now, Tim.
And Jeffrey would have a much better sense of what might happen there. But this is just a reminder to the president that there are 3 branches of government, and that at least the judiciary
co-equal
and the judiciary is pretty healthy. What I'm looking to see is how the president reacts. In the past, he has dropped the presidential demeanor and gone right after the courts when he hasn't gotten a response or a decision that he liked. So let's see what he does today. Best thing for him would just be to say nothing and just appeal it. But we never know with Donald Trump.
Well, that seems unlikely that he would do that, right? Considering what he has said about the courts in the past.
It's a shame. It's very important for every member of the triad, constitutional triad, to show respect for the other. It's part of the deal. You play in this game, you play in that sandbox, those are the rules. So if you're in Congress, if you're in the judiciary, if you're in the executive branch, you've got to show respect. It's necessary, and let's hope. Let's hope against hope that he does.
All right, we're going to continue to explore this in a moment. Tim Natale, thank you so much for that. I wanted to go back to health care, though. The president endorsing a deal that has been agreed to, at least sort of the structure of a deal, you could say, between Democrats and Republicans, and extending those cost-sharing subsidies that provide many Americans health insurance, that help them pay for health insurance. The president endorsing that after just putting out an executive order that would have abolished those subsidies. So let's get to CNN congressional correspondent Phil Mattingly, who can help us with this, because this was something that the president by EO was going to eradicate, but that was obviously unpalatable to Democrats and Republicans on the Hill, Phil.
Yeah, on some level, kind of sparking talks that had actually, Brianna, have been ongoing for a number of weeks now between Senator Lamar Alexander, the top Republican on the Senate Health Committee, and Patty Murray, his Democratic counterpart who's from Washington. They had been negotiating on how to make CSRs basically come from Congress, how to make these subsidies to insurance companies that allow them to bring down premiums for individuals that are in the marketplaces come from Congress and not be subject to the executive branch, just for the reason that the president proved just a couple days ago, that he could cancel them. So here's what this deal actually entails right now. What Democrats want. They would get 2 years of funding for these subsidies, these cost-sharing reduction payments. They would also get a little bit north of $100 million in Obamacare outreach funding. So essentially the ability to try and more or less get people into the exchanges, let people know that enrollment is happening, those sorts of things. What Republicans would get, and Brianna, this is extremely important if this deal has any future whatsoever, is on the regulatory flexibility side. We heard a lot about this during the repeal and replace debate. We heard about this in kind of every iteration of it, from 1.0 to Graham Cassidy at the end. States want the ability to apply for waivers and get waivers from Obamacare related to tailoring their regulations to better serve kind of their constituents, their state customers. This has been particularly onerous in the past by design. Obamacare didn't want states to be able to opt out of a lot of the regulatory protections that are in the law that currently stand. What Republicans would basically get out of this is twofold. One, they would get kind of a change in how the measure of whether or not a plan is affordable is actually constructed. That would, in and of itself, would grant a lot of flexibility in terms of how the states could actually structure their plans. The other thing they would be able to do is it would speed up the waiver process, which right now a lot of states deem very, very onerous, and would also give other states the ability to almost mimic in the near term another waiver that another state has gotten. So say Alaska, which has a reinsurance program which allows them to take federal money and pay down premiums for others. Another state could get that almost immediately if they applied for it. So the regulatory piece is a very big deal if this has any future in a Republican-controlled Senate, obviously a Republican-controlled House as well. And for the Democrats, it's no secret. They want these CSRs, these subsidies. They want them funded. They want the Obamacare money as well. That would be what they would get out of the deal. The big question now is, where does this deal go from here? Has the president's endorsement? Obviously, it has two key Senate leaders' endorsement, but there are many steps left to go, Brianna.
Especially as it preserves a key part of Obamacare, despite the president saying Obamacare, as he sees it, is dead. All right, hang tight for us, Phil. We'll be back with you. I do want to talk more about the health care deal, including reaction from Republicans. Where are they on this? Next. Plus, President Trump claims the recent victory over ISIS in Raqqa was thanks to his changes in the military. Hear what Senator McCain had to say about that. I'll also get reaction from an Air Force lieutenant colonel. A big bipartisan agreement with potentially a solution to the end of, well, as the president had planned, subsidies to pay for health insurance for many Americans. This could lead to saving that for the next couple of years, at least, for a number of people. So joining me now to talk about it, we have senior politics reporter MJ Lee, CNN political commentator Mary Catherine Ham. She is a senior writer for The Federalist. All right, so this is pretty fascinating, MJ. And this was a discussion that was already in progress, but it seems like the president saying that he was going to get rid of these subsidies that help so many people pay for their health insurance spurred a discussion between Patty Murray, a Democrat, and Lamar Alexander, a Republican.
Yeah, sure. Alexander and Murray had actually been talking about, trying to reach some kind of bipartisan deal for months now. But Alexander ended up announcing when Graham Cassidy appeared to be going somewhere, this is now a couple of weeks ago, he said that these bipartisan talks had to go on hold. Now, when that Republican bill ended up not going anywhere because Republicans didn't end up having the votes, these talks sort of started up again. And, the way that this sort of played out at the White House today was pretty fascinating because it was literally within minutes that the president was bashing these CSR payments, saying that these payments line the pockets of insurance companies. It was during that time, sort of simultaneously, that this deal on Capitol Hill was announced. And then when the president was asked about this bipartisan deal, he appeared to endorse it, saying, well, this is a short-term solution. They have been working really hard. And I think, seeing how the president actually talks about this issue going forward is going to be really interesting and key to whether he is able to rally these Republicans, who many of whom are skeptical about supporting something like this, whether he ends up really sort of pulling his weight and talking to individual members and saying we need to